Hello, I'm Berl Schwartz from City Pulse, and welcome to our June get-together with the Mayor of Lansing, Andy Schor, here at the Message Makers studio, and it is Thursday, June 13th. Your Honor, long time no see.
Yeah, it feels like it's been a while.
Yeah, inside joke, but we were together last night for City Pulse's annual Inclusion Awards dinner for the LGBTQ community. And when you were talking to the audience, you were the MC. Thank you again. You came pretty close to endorsing Mayor Pete Buttigieg for the Democratic nomination. Let's talk about that.
Sure. Well, I've had a chance to at least see most of the candidates, not all, but most. And there are several that I've been very impressed with. And I have known Mayor Pete for a year and a half now. He was at the training that I went to when I first became mayor, so even before I was elected. And we had a great conversation. Just hearing him talk about his city and his governing style, his background. And it wasn't because he was running for president. We were just chatting. And we got to know each other. And I'm very impressed. And when you hear the mayor of South Bend is running for president, first you think, he's the mayor of South Bend. But he's done a great job. He has gone on national media. He has been all around the country, and he's catching fire. And I'm impressed. Now, that's not to say I've endorsed anybody. There are quite a few candidates that I'm very impressed with. I think Cory Booker is a very personable candidate. I like the fact that he was the mayor of Newark. I like the idea of having somebody with executive experience who understands kind of the governing process and working with legislative bodies. So someone like Pete Buttigieg, someone like Cory Booker, that's appealing to me in terms of governance. In terms of electability, I think that they both have that, and many of the candidates on the Democratic side do. And then you've got President Trump, who's already been elected once, so electability is certainly a factor. But I want to make sure we have the right person governing. I was very impressed with Mayor Garcetti out of LA, but he chose not to run. I know there are other mayors and governors and many senators running, so it's a big field. But I am very impressed with Mayor Pete, just getting to know him on a personal level.
We're starting to see now, just in the last few days, Joe Biden become the target of other candidates. And this whole process, of course, is unusual because of the size of the field, and campaigning seems to start the day the last presidential election ends. But do you have concerns about how this is going to shake out? Are we going to get to a convention without a Democratic candidate?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Now, I'm no professional. I've done this a few times. But, the Republicans had something very similar when they started running. They had, 15 candidates or whatever it was, and they kind of winnowed out. They reduced as the primaries and the caucuses went through. I think when we get through Iowa, when we get through New Hampshire and South Carolina, I think as we start getting through the primaries and we start seeing who's getting momentum, I think you'll see folks falling off to a small and more manageable field. Is it possible we get to a convention without a nominee? I guess it's possible, but it's not something I see right now because when your support dries up in the voting states, then your money dries up, and then you can't campaign further on. I remember years ago when Giuliani was running for president, he decided to forget the early states and go right into the later states, and by then he didn't have money to campaign in the later voter-rich states. So. It's an exercise in getting to the early states while still touching base with many of the purple states, which is why we've seen, we're not an early state, but we're seeing presidential candidates here because we're still a state that has gone Democrat for many years, since the 80s, and yet went red the last election cycle. So I think candidates have to continue to push the momentum in the early states, but touch base with voters in states like Michigan, where it's up for grabs, because you don't want to let it go till the end and then possibly lose it.
Is America ready, do you think, if Buttigieg were the nominee? Do you think America's ready for a gay presidential candidate?
I do, because I think America's ready for the best presidential candidate. They're ready for the person who is going to move this country forward. It doesn't mean everybody is ready, and that's sad to say. But I think America, as an entity, as a country, we are. Because we're ready for a veteran. We're ready for a mayor. We're ready for someone with the experience in the past to lead, as well as the ideas and the youth. America has been very willing to elect Midwesterners and Southerners in the past. So I think it's one of his many qualities, and I think people are going to be ready for the best candidate, and they'll make the decision that way.
Do you think America would be ready for a candidate as old as Joe Biden?
Well, we've elected candidates that are up there in age many times recently. I mean, President Trump is older. We elected Ronald Reagan. We had, Hillary Clinton was older. So yeah, I think that, again, I don't think people are looking at age as a factor, as an older person as a factor or a negative factor. I think they're looking at the best possible candidate, and we'll see what happens. I think people are ready for a black woman. I think they would be ready for Kamala Harris. Again, it's the best possible candidate. So a Cory Booker, African American male, a Kamala Harris, a Pete Buttigieg. I think all of these people the country is ready for that, because I think many in the country are just ready for what they feel is the best person to move us forward.
Also, do you think there's a generational change in power taking place now? It might be a factor.
I do. I look at, I'm 44 years old, and I look at myself. I look at Derek Dobies, who's the mayor of Jackson, who's my age. I look at Rosalind Bliss. Those 40-year-olds are starting to really take leadership. We look at many of the candidates and the electeds in the U.S. Senate or in the legislature, and I do think there is kind of a generational shift that's happening, but that's normal. It's normal for 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds to, in essence, to be in these leadership positions. That doesn't mean, a 70-year-old isn't a good choice for a leadership position, but I do think that there is somewhat of a generational shift.
All right. This is Pride Weekend in Lansing. Detroit Pride, Motor City Pride, did not really go smoothly because there was a neo-Nazi presence, and the police there have come in for some criticism, rightly or wrongly, for not letting the public know the neo-Nazis were going to march, and then some criticism for what some interpreted as protecting the Nazis. The police said, no, we were protecting the public. Are there reports that neo-Nazis will be in Lansing this weekend? And if so, what is your strategy?
We haven't I can't give away necessarily all the strategies. We don't need everybody to know what our policing is going to be doing. But we have not heard specific neo-Nazi reports. We know that there is a group who is actually pro-LGBT, but anti-government, I guess. It's more like an anarchist feel that is going to be at Durant Park. They have asked to have Durant Park, so they're going to be up there. So we know that. We do not. They actually came to us. They asked for usage of the park. So they actually went through government, even though they're kind of a semi-anarchist organization. So good for them. But they are pro-LGBT, so we don't see issues. I think they don't like the corporatization, what they would call it, of kind of the Pride effort, which I have not seen, but everyone's entitled to their opinion. We have not heard specific neo-Nazi marching issues coming, but it doesn't mean that we're not prepared for it. Our police and our folks have watched what happened in Detroit and elsewhere within the country, and we'll be at Pride like they are every year to make sure that everything goes smoothly. I mean, when we went last year, I remember I was the Grand Marshal last year, and there were people there who were yelling at the folks in the parade. We had officers come in and separate. You don't want to trample on anybody's constitutional rights to be somewhere, but they can't be threatening. There can't be hate speech. There can't be all the things that we protect. and we'll be ready.
All right. You exercised your first veto since we met last over funding for a neighborhood coordinator.
Correct.
Versus funding for some sort of super budget officer. I'm not sure exactly what that job is going to be or will be. Tell us about that experience.
So, a good point. I put in money in my budget for a variety of things. City Council, in consideration of the budget, they eliminated the Greenwise Power Initiative, so the renewable energy. They eliminated that, which was a little over $100,000, $104,000. They took the arts increase that I gave. I gave a $25,000 arts grant increase, and they halved it. So they changed it from a $25,000 increase to a $12,500 increase. They did the same thing with the $25,000 increase that we gave for facade improvement. So that was another $12,500. And they cut the Sister Cities initiative by $5,000. So in essence, they put together about $135,000 towards a position that our financial health team recommended and that our union supported, which would be a chief restructuring officer, chief strategy officer. And the idea behind that position is it'll look at city government, it'll look at all of our processes, see if there are efficiencies and dollars that can be saved. It'll look at our legacy costs and all the dollars that we're paying, our $45 million that we're paying in legacy costs, which is our pension and healthcare obligations. Take a look at that. It'll take a look at all of our existing structures and see if there are savings that can be made. So the council amended my budget to take out, in essence, $135,000, and I agreed to that. Then they amended the budget to remove $60,000, which we're using for a neighborhood coordinator, and put that into the restructuring officer also, making it a $195,000 position. That I vetoed for a variety of reasons. One, I very much believe that we need capacity in our neighborhoods department. We've got a director and an admin basically doing all of our neighborhood work, doing a lot of our innovation work, doing our data work, doing all the things that are really important for our city, and we need to have more capacity. We are doing a ton in our neighborhoods. We're doing, neighborhood newsletters, Walking Wednesdays, Citizen Academy. We're doing the Love Lansing. We're doing a lot of stuff in our neighborhoods to build capacity and to have great neighborhoods. And I believe we need a neighborhood coordinator to work on a lot of this and more, so that we can also work on innovation. We can work on grant money that we're bringing in from out of the city. We can work on making Lansing this world-class city that Dave Hollister talked about, and we're basically there. So I put that in the budget. Council eliminated it and put that money into the restructuring officer, and I vetoed it because I don't believe we need $195,000 for a chief restructuring officer. I think $135,000 is plenty of money. If that's for one person, that's going to be our second highest cabinet position at $135,000. If it's a city employee, we worked with the financial health team. We can identify benefits packages and stuff like that. $135,000 is plenty. So with the veto, we get them both. We get the $135,000 chief restructuring officer, and we get the $60,000 neighborhood coordinator. We get them both. Council attempted to override the veto, and they were unsuccessful. So the money remains as we put it in my budget for the $60,000, the $135,000 that council amended my budget. I let that stand without a veto and worked with them on that. And I believe it was the best possible result for the city of Lansing.
So now you've got a couple of positions to fill. What are you doing about the restructuring officer?
We're working on that. My office, City Council, the FHT, the Financial Health Team, and the unions are getting together this week, I believe. The FHT is putting together a position description. They would very much like to see this as a full-time city position. The money was passed either for a contracted position or a city position. Contract position would be like if there was a company that came in and did an evaluation or kind of a contractor who was doing the work. The FHT would very much like to see it as a full-time city position. So we're navigating that. Is it a full-time city position with benefits and a cabinet level in my office? Is it a contracted position? What does the job description look like? I think different people have different ideas. Councilman Jackson during the budget tried to add a sustainability officer, and the votes were not there at council to create that. So I think there's questions of, does the restructuring officer also deal with sustainability? Does it not? Does it deal with legacy costs? Does it not? Does it just deal with departments and what monies we can try and save through efficiencies? So the FHT will come up with a job description. City Council put in their budget in the boilerplate that there would be a conversation before the end of June on what the position looks like. We will have that conversation, and then I will hire that person.
So it's as far as details go, an undefined position. What is the overriding need that you hope this person will be able to handle?
Well, the financial health team, in their communication to myself and council, identified, in essence, a need for efficiencies, which we believe there have been a lot of efficiencies in the city, but I'm always interested in having someone who is from the outside, with outside eyes, to come in and look and see. This is the exact reason we started through a priority-based budget, to, in essence, not to look at each department in a vacuum, but to look at it horizontally as the whole city. What the end user, what is that citizen services they're getting, or the duplications. We started that in our priority-based budget. This person, I believe, is going to look at processes that we have. I think that was the part of the intention. But again, it's someone who can look at, we spend almost a quarter of our budget on legacy costs, on costs for pension and healthcare that do not go to services. Now, you got to remember that's somebody's healthcare benefits and that's somebody's pension benefits. It's not going to services, but it's going to somebody who helped to serve the city in the past. So you have to navigate those costs, and we deal a lot of that in negotiations with our unions, and as we discuss things with retirees. So we're dealing with a lot of that. But this is someone my understanding is will come in with kind of an outside perspective, whose sole job it is to look at the structure of the city and see if there are ways to change that structure to save dollars that can then be used for other services.
Why is this not just a consulting position?
Could be. It could be. Again, it could be a contracted position where it's someone who comes in and does consulting with an evaluation. It could be. It also could be a full-time position. The Chamber of Commerce has someone who they work with that does that for them, and they said it's helped them out significantly. So we're going to have that conversation of what it looks like. It could be a contracted position in the first year and then a full-time employee. We haven't really figured out the structure yet.
Okay. The neighborhood coordinator position, I think I read in a city press release that neighborhoods are the number 2 concern Lansing voters. What are your overall goals for the neighborhoods?
Oh, we have a lot that we want to do. The Chamber of Commerce did a survey, and neighborhoods came in at number 2. I think it was 40%. I mean, clearly roads was number 1, and probably in the 70s. But we have a lot of things we want to do. We want to increase capacity. We want to make sure that people know all of the resources. You want to have, for neighborhoods, you want to have the amenities. You want to have the parks. You want to have the concerts, and you want to have all the cool things that people can do. You have to have, good roads and sidewalks. You have to have safety within our neighborhoods. You have to have, everything that makes somebody enjoy and be comfortable within their neighborhood. That all falls in the neighborhood. So again, it's not vertical. It's not just what is this department doing. It's all the different services that we can do for our neighbors. So it's all of that. We're trying to do a lot of things. Again, we're building capacity. We're doing Walking Wednesdays, showing off all of our different neighborhoods and different resources. We're doing these neighborhood resource meetings quarterly. We're doing newsletters with our neighborhood leaders and our neighborhood associations and our neighborhood groups. We did neighborhoods in bloom, where we did beautification with flowers. We just did a neighborhood cleanup. We're doing a variety of those. We're working with churches for, I Love My City, which are cleanup and other programs. So we're doing a lot to clean up, to make them look nice. We're working on, some sidewalk and some street ideas that we'll try and roll out through our neighborhoods. Whenever there's an issue with a park or with anything, our neighborhoods department goes out and knocks doors and gives flyers and makes sure that people that know what's going on within their neighborhood. We're doing Serve Lansing, which is a volunteer program that our neighbors can use and that we can use throughout our neighborhoods. So we're doing a lot. We're doing a lot of work. We've got a kind of a whole list. They've got their own website where you can go to see We've got a lot of different neighborhoods throughout Lansing where, there are different activities that they engage with the city. We did a grants program, our block by block, where we gave out thousands and thousands of dollars for different things, and different neighborhoods applied for different things. We had bike racks, we had soccer, we had trees, we gave away lots of money through our neighborhood advisory board to our different neighborhood associations and groups for work that they're going to do. We can't do everything at the city, so we give a little bit of money. They get all the volunteers, and they do work in their neighborhood. We just did a Beacon Field in the South Side, which is a new soccer field and a new trails and a new park. And we're working on Riverfront Park, not Riverfront. We're working on Rotary Park in the downtown. So there's lots of different activities going on throughout our neighborhoods.
Let's talk about the number one concern in that chamber survey.
Roads.
I thought about it last night as I hit one of those potholes that makes you wonder if you're going to get to your destination before the tire goes flat. I know the city has a program where if people call in a pothole, it gets filled within 24 hours.
48, depending on the rain. Depending on the rain.
Beyond that, though, is there a program? Is the whatever department fills potholes out there looking for potholes? Because I didn't stop to call in.
Yeah, somewhat. It's a capacity issue. We do tell people report. You report the pothole, and we'll get there. They do send people out, on trucks. It's our public service department, and they do send people out. But they will go to those that are reported first. And when they get there, they don't just, if there's 6 potholes in that area, they don't just fill that one and leave. They fill what they see in that area. But they're working all the time. It's rained almost every day the last 2 months, it feels like. So it's difficult to fill potholes when it's raining because of the integrity. You can't do it when it's wet. So it's more difficult, but as it dries out, our folks will get to the potholes in the roads. Again, it's easier in the summer than it is in the winter because the hot patch with the asphalt is easier to use than the cold patch, which is not as good, which they can use in the winter. You get the freeze thaw, so when it's cold, there still are some potholes you have to fix, but we try and do most of them with the hot asphalt, which will dry and is better for the road. We're doing a lot of road work, and they do some proactively, but not a ton because we have a lot of need and very little resources. We get about $10 million or so to fix roads and potholes and everything else from the state. We have about $300 million in need. So $300 million in need for our roads in Lansing, $10 million from state and our millage and the feds. We're catching up, but we're not making a lot of progress. We're not making a dent because we just don't get the resources that we need. We're looking at other avenues and things that we can do, but any of that requires more money from Lansing residents. And so we're trying to figure out how can we fix potholes? How can we reconstruct some main streets? We do 3 or 4 main streets, but we don't get to a lot of the neighborhood streets just because we don't get the money from the state that we need. I think we're going to do Miller, parts of Jolly. We're looking at resurfacing Capitol. There's one on the east side that I can't think of. We try and pick a few major streets throughout the city so it's equitable. And these are the streets that you're driving on, as you go to work, as you go to your friend's house or whatever. But they're not the neighborhood streets. Those, we patch and we do some street work. We do maybe 8 or 10 streets a year. But it's a challenge. And we're trying to get to sidewalks. And we just put a lot of money into sidewalks. We put $300,000 from the budget. We put another, I think, $400,000 from when we sold the Townsend ramp. So we have about $700,000 we're putting into sidewalks because we want to try and fix some of these sidewalks. You got them, some of them that are sticking up, and we can slice them off at the top. We can wedge them. So we're doing a lot of that work.
Is this typical of cities in Michigan, or did something go wrong with the city government at some point?
No, this is typical of cities in Michigan. I mean, this is why the governor ran on Fix the Damn Roads. She didn't run on Fix the Damn Roads in the city of Lansing. She ran on Fix the Damn Roads. Right. You're seeing this everywhere. Now, I mean, the hard reality is you're seeing this everywhere in cities. The the formula from the state to issue the gas tax dollars is 34% to state roads, 34% to county roads, and 21.9% to city roads. So cities and villages get the smallest amount and probably have the biggest need. Not probably, have the biggest need. So if I've had people tell me, well, I've driven north on 127 to go to the cottage, to go to the UP or whatever, and the roads are nice up there. The answer is, yeah, they are. They're better because MDOT gets more money and the counties get more money. And, I'd like to see the entire pot grow. But it is still a frustration to me that cities are where there's density, cities are where there's the most used roads, the highest traffic roads, and we get the least amount of money. Now, the governor in her gas tax proposal proposed a formula, and that formula would work for most trafficked roads, and that would help Lansing. Of course, it still would be our main roads, but then we can take our gas tax money. If the governor passed hers, we would take the existing money we had and put it into the neighborhood roads and take the new money and put it towards our most traveled roads, and it would make a dent. It would make an impact.
One other area I'd like to get to, we're working on, we're doing a story examining the police and fighters in terms of the size of those departments. They've obviously shrunk in the last 10 years, but the population of Lansing's increased. We've heard about a restructuring, or rather a restructuring officer, the budget thing,
Sure.
the neighborhoods coordinator, but do we have enough firefighters and police officers?
You never have enough. You never have enough. Maybe I wouldn't say that. There's always someone who wants more policing in one place over another. Lansing, I think 20 years ago had more. During the recession, it was reduced. I want to say we had, again, this is before my time, I want to say we had 220 police officers, something like that. During the recession, it went down into probably the 170s. Now we're back up to 203 badged officers. So, since right now, that's what we have. We actually have more than that. We do what's called front loading. So we know we're going to have probably a number of retirements in the next year. So we've actually overhired by 5, 6, 7, something like that. So that we're overhired. So we've got 203 funded spots, but we put more on because we know some are going to retire, and we don't want 10 people retiring, and now we're short 10. And we want to have those 10 so that when the retirements come, we're back at the level that we expected. I would love to hire another 15 police officers, but that every police officer we hire is $130,000 per year, and I don't have another $2 million. Right. We just don't have that in the budget, and so that's a challenge. It's a challenge we're always going to have. It's $2 million, and then it adds the legacy costs that we talked about. So it's a challenge. We added one more this year. A new community policing officer. So we've got 10 community policing areas. These are the proactive policing officers who also react, but a lot of it is proactive. So we added an 11th zone. Last year we added a police social worker who is doing incredible work right now. It took a few months to hire, but Jan Bidwell is doing a fantastic job as a social worker addressing many of the mental health issues that our police officers run up against. Again, we're back. We have increased over the last few years, and in my 18 months, we've increased by 1 and front-loaded by between 5 and 10, depending on who's retired and who hasn't. So we do have increased capacity, but I'm sure we could use more. There's no doubt. Our police chief, I'm sure would like to have 15 to 20 more. Our fire chief, I'm sure would like to have 6 to 10 more. I think 6 was the proposal. But you have to navigate $130,000, every year for 25 years per officer and per firefighter, and we have a balance. Now, when we look at the numbers, it's my understanding that Lansing is actually on the higher end when you look at other cities in Michigan for ratio, police officer per resident. When you look at the national, we're a little bit lower than the national average. So it depends on where you want to make your comparison. Do you want to compare us to San Francisco and New York and LA or Nashville? You want to compare us to Grand Rapids and Jackson and Ann Arbor? Just depends on what you want to make your comparison. But my understanding is we're on the high end when you compare to other Michigan cities in terms of ratio, but we're on the low end when you compare nationally.
All right. And the police chief, Chief Yankowski, is in the running to be police chief in Grand Rapids. A great opportunity for him. The city just hired a new fire chief. We ended up with no minorities in the final group of candidates for that position. Is anything going to be different in this surge that might yield a different outcome?
Well, he's not gone yet. He hasn't left yet.
He may not get the job.
He may not get the job. But we're looking at, I know Grand Rapids used a recruiter, kind of a headhunter, to go out and look for candidates, and I would explore that. I'd like to talk to the mayor there, to Rosalind Bliss, and if they take our police chief, clearly, that
I can send you somebody. It could be a trade.
It could be a trade. It could be a trade. That's funny. I should suggest that to her. I'm going to tell her you told me that. But I've said it from the beginning. When you have the best, everybody wants the best, and we have some of the best staff in the city of Lansing, and people are coming after them because they want the best. And Chief Yankowski has been here 25 years. He's retirement eligible as of September. So if he ends out there, then we would look at the processes. We posted in a variety of places, in a variety of national places for fire chief, and we got a good candidate pool. There was no minority candidate, which was surprising. There was no minority qualified applicant, which was surprising. But we also know that in the fire service that it's tough to have minorities in the pool that are available. But I'd like to see if there's some kind of a recruiter, look and see what Grand Rapids did, see if what more we can do just to have the best possible choice nationally. But we haven't gotten there yet because we don't have a vacancy yet.
All right. Any last thoughts?
No, this is it. I'm sure you'll get me again in a month.
That's right. We'll be back in July. Thank you very much.
Sure.
And thank you for watching. We'll talk to you again from Message Maker Studio in July. For City Pulse, I'm Berl Schwartz.